The Ministry of Health is stepping up the war against HIV/AIDS, and today new HIV prevention, care and treatment guidelines will be launched at the Machakos People's Park. One significant change in these guidelines will be the shift from using DDT for routine patient use to its use in the treatment of patients infected with HIV. Now, concerns has been raised on the use of DDT, especially among pregnant women and breastfeeding mothers to whom the drug has been prescribed, with the Ministry of Health warning counties to stop its prescription. On News Center this morning, we look at the effect of the new guidelines and their impact on prevention, management of HIV/AIDS. That is the discussion that we went to have this morning with two beautiful ladies in our studio here on KTN News Center. Seated next to me, in my immediate left, is none other than Feni Awiti, who is an activist when it comes to championing for the rights of the people living with HIV and AIDS. Seated next to Feni is Dr. Eve Muthoni, who is the HIV and TB coordinator at NASCOP. This is an important conversation that we want to have this morning here on KTN News Center. And Dr. Muthoni, first things first, what is the current number when it comes to people infected with HIV and AIDS and also new infections in the country?
Okay, let me just give you like an overview. We're working with a number of 1.5 million Kenyans with HIV, and based on the data that is there for UNAIDS, actually HIV estimates 2018, though it's not yet been published, at least the prevalence has gone down. We are now working with a prevalence of 4.8, unlike how it was before last year, 5.9. So we are making great strides. We are making great strides as a country. So it's just a clear indication that infection is actually going down. It depends. There are certain age groups where the infection is still relatively high, especially with regards to the youth. This age group we are talking about is the 15 to 24. That particular age group is quite troublesome. But at least for the adults, we are talking about 24 and above, at least it's stabilized. So our main problem is actually with the children, and actually the adolescents are the bulk of the problem with regards to new infections. With regards to new infections. And just before I bring in Feni, today we're launching the 28 guidelines for the use of antiretroviral treatment and prevention. Probably if you can give us a bit of what the guidelines entails. Okay, so the 2018 guidelines, so they're looking at quite a number of new things. The first thing we have is with regards to HIV testing. We've introduced HIV self-testing, where you can actually you can just swab your gum, and it's a 15-minute test, you get your results. We also have assisted partner notification service, where if you get tested, you can voluntarily tell the healthcare worker the other partners that you have, and the healthcare worker will get in touch with them. The other new bit is now the new treatment. Now we've introduced dolutegravir. There was also efavirenz as an option, but we used dolutegravir. But there's a caution, especially with women of childbearing potential, and we are advocating for effective contraception because of the data that we have, and we've not been able to ascertain as yet as a country. The other thing we've introduced also is more frequent testing and more frequent monitoring, which we call viral load. I'm sure you've heard about something to do with copies. When you have HIV, you are meant to be monitored every other month, every 6 months, how you're progressing. So that's the other thing we've actually introduced. And I'm sure you're well aware that now breastfeeding has been recommended to be 2 years. So those are some of the main major things that guidelines. So it means, from what you're saying, it means then you really don't have to be pricked for your blood for you to do the test. No. Now there's more innovation. You can actually just test your saliva, and you can get the test. But that does not mean that it's confirmatory. You still have to go to the facility, because you have to undergo counseling even after that. So it's not just you test at home. But it's something, this one was innovated so as to encourage the men. We were having a very big problem with regards to getting men getting tested. And especially the other bits, it's also helping, especially with the key populations, the sex workers, when they're in their everyday work. So it's helped a lot.
It's really helped a lot. And Fanny, let me bring you to this conversation. Are you aware of the new guidelines that are being launched today?
Yes, I am. I am.
And what do you think of the new guidelines? You know, new innovation on how you can actually get to know about your HIV status.
Well, about getting to know about your HIV status, personally, I think it's a more enhanced way, and in a positive way, because we've had cases where, maybe personally, I'll talk from my experience. When I discovered my status, my pre-counseling was not well done. Like even the counseling, I was just told that I was asked, do you have a boyfriend? And I said no. Are you sexually active? I said no. And then I got tested. So people normally fear, they do not really trust maybe the VCTs for good pre-counseling, maybe professional pre-counseling and post-counseling. So for such cases, then the self-test would do for them. So I think it's a really good thing. And then, of course, in as much as you're told in the room that it's confidential, you know, it's confidential and all that, it's HIV, so it's still a big deal to people, and you'd really, really want it to yourself, to keep it to yourself. So yeah, it's a good thing to like.
So for you, Fanny, there was no pre-counseling. Can you just probably?
No, there was
no pre-counseling.
No.
Which Dr. Muthoni, it's very important for someone to go to have pre-counseling before doing their test. Can you bring us to in just like a minute? Give us a journey of how you got to know your status.
Oh well, so now there was this organization that came to our school, and they were offering bread and soda. And they said that when you go for testing, then you're given the bread and soda. And, you know, I was 16 years old and it was a boarding school. So I said, why not, you know? And I was not sexually active at that time. In no way was I exposed to HIV. And by exposed to HIV during those days, you know very well, it's maybe through sex mostly. So now I went for my test and I was asked, do you have a boyfriend? And I said, no, I don't have a boyfriend. Are you sexually active? No. Have you ever been tested? No. So, and then the counselor interpreted the results. Literally took me through the process of interpretation of the results. Single line is negative, double line is positive. So then we did the test. And then after 5 minutes, the results came out positive. And she asked me again, you said you don't have a boyfriend? Yes, I did. And okay, now you can check your results. You're HIV positive. And that was it. There
so
was
the news
no,
was just...
And there was no post-counseling. And she told me, now you can go. And that was it.
Okay.
There was no in repeat, like maybe Unigold or something like that. Like there was nothing done after that, yeah.
Dr. Muthoni, what can you say about her story just before we get into the guidelines that are being launched today? Because for her, it was the school brought an organization, carried out HIV test, and just the news just broke into her, you're positive.
I must say that was an unfortunate event.
Yeah.
Actually, as the government, we don't advocate for that. And this is no longer being done in schools. We even have, with regards to even schools, we have a sensitization package for even the teachers themselves, such that even if by the time you're in school and you are aware of your status, the teacher is able to understand your situation. So we've incorporated the Ministry of Education in this. So we actually have now, we have ways in such that it can be done, but it's not being done the way, unfortunately, it happened for you. So, yeah.
Was it illegal for the school to do that?
It was wrong.
It was wrong.
It was wrong.
Okay, now let's get back to the guidelines. Yeah. As working for NASCOP and of course in government guidelines today, how are you planning to implement it, especially when it comes to people who don't even know their status, or people who know their status and they've not yet started undergoing treatment?
Okay, let me first take you back. These are the 2018 guidelines. We initially had 2016 guidelines where we were advocating for immediately you test, you're meant to go something called readiness assessment, and we give you a timeline of approximately 2 weeks. So now everyone who is getting tested, the recommendation is you're meant to start your antiretroviral therapy. For those people who don't know their status, there are quite a number of campaigns that are being done, adverts, I believe quite a number of people, you've seen billboards. So there's a lot of happenings going on, even prevention now, we have the PrEP. So there are quite a number of things that we are doing with regards to people who don't know their status. And also the other thing we are going into is integration. It's not just the CCC, the HIV testing is being done all over. So even when you go for your blood pressure, for your diabetes check, HIV test is being done there also at all entry points. Yeah.
Okay, it's being done at all entry points, and with the new guidelines help the country in achieving its ratio of 90-90, which 90 is people living with HIV awareness, their status, and the other 90% of all people with diagnosed HIV on treatment. And of course, the other 90% people on treatment attaining a viral suppression by 2020. So will this guideline help the country in achieving its ratio of 90-90-90?
Okay, the first 90, yes, you're right, it's about people getting to know their status, and we believe the self-testing and the assisted partner notification will help a lot in achieving the first 90. The second 90, because even as a country we are at 85%, where people who are aware of their status are on treatment. So you see, when you have, especially with the introduction of this drug called dolutegravir, it's been seen that patients actually love the drug. You take it once a day and you're good to go. So it's helping with adherence. That's the second 90. So the guidelines will really help with that. The third 90 is viral suppression, and it works with the second 90. If people take their drugs every day, people are monitored every other time, and we've increased our viral load tests. So it's going to help with the third 90. So the guidelines are cross-cutting.
Okay.
For all the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fanny, and what have you been on, and for how long have you been on the treatment?
Well, I've been on treatment for 10 years, from 2008. But I was on efavirenz at first, and as we know, efavirenz, during those days there were side effects. Major side effects of efavirenz was that it caused deformation. And so when I got pregnant, they had to change. So from efavirenz to lamivudine, zidovudine, and nevirapine. It's a combination, though. It's one combination in 3. So 3 drugs in 1. Yeah. So then I've been on that all through until now, the introduction of the DTG, and it's been so effective because. Well, efavirenz at first, side effects, those days side effects were so severe, very many. Hallucinations, nightmares, diarrhea, throwing up, dizziness, more drowsiness, loss of appetite. But then right now, with the DTG, there's that, you feel tired, not that much, and then it's not after some time. After some time, it's gone, maybe 1 month, and then it's gone. So yeah, it's effective.
It's effective.
It's really effective, and then it's flexible because there's no greater feeling than just getting the enhanced drug. And I mean flexible in a way you take it once in a day and that's it.
But now, I mean, with this new guideline, the DTG, there's a lot of change that's happening. I mean, because the guideline, let me just get it correctly, one of the guidelines will be the shift from using DTG for routine patients used to its use in third-line treatment of patients infected with HIV and AIDS. There's change over there. Are you in support of this change?
Well, I cannot comment about that because personally I'm still on the first line, and it's really working for me from my end. Then maybe Dr. Mudoni would say based on the viral load, maybe based on the viral load of the patients. Normally when you're on the first line, it means that your body is effectively okay with the drugs that you're given. And then if it resists, you're introduced to the second line and then the third line. So it really depends on so many things. I'm not like really in a position to say no, the patients in this particular third line are not here.
Okay, Dr. Muthoni, you've had her sentiments concerning DTG and changes are being brought when it comes to this guideline. Were the sentiments taken into consideration?
Wow, of course, especially even with the guidelines, when we did the validation, we actually involved the community living with HIV, the women, so we even took them through before you're actually seeing what is happening today. So they're well aware of what is happening because they're even going to help us to teach the people on the ground about, because we want to work on patient empowerment. Let the patient be the person who's taking care of him or herself.
So will it be progressive or is this new guidelines, let's do this change of the drug?
No, it can't be it can't be, and it's what Feni has talked about. Before you even change from one drug to the other, there are quite a number of steps you have to go through, and it's patient-centered. It depends on the patient and the various clinical characteristics of the patient. So switching from one drug to the other, it's not a blanket switch. It doesn't happen like that.
But this will be more beneficial for pregnant women because the concern has always been raised when it comes to the side effects of the newborns.
Okay, for pregnant women, for now, we are a bit conservative, especially with regards to dolutegravir. What we are recommending is efavirenz. And data has shown, I'm sure she was on the efavirenz 600.
Yeah.
Now there's efavirenz 400. Efavirenz 400 has less side effects. Studies have shown that there's evidence that it can also work with the pregnant and breastfeeding women. So they at least have a better option, unlike what they had before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And what are some of the challenges that you've faced while while using some of these drugs? Of course, you've talked about drowsiness, nightmares, and just before you answer that question, Dr. Muthoni, I mean nightmares. How is it related with the drug?
So I'm sure you're talking about the efavirenz.
Yeah.
So you see, it's basically the effect on what we call the central nervous system. So that's how it works to some extent. I don't want to go into the complexities, but that's how it affects the central nervous system. Then that's when the patient now gets the nightmares. At times they experience forgetfulness. We had a very big problem, especially with regards to adolescents who school with the efavirenz 600 milligram dose. So we listened to the patient, and that's why now we are advocating for the 400.
For the 400. How did you handle the side effects of the drugs?
Well, for me, I was psychologically prepared because you're taken through counseling, first of all. It's not like an ambush. It's not like you're experiencing them. It's not a self-experience. You're literally taken through the process. The first, like they have the first 3 sessions of counseling. You're told these are the side effects. So, psychologically you're prepared. And with the throwing up, I would take a pinch of salt. And I actually never threw up, literally. When I felt nauseatic, I took a pinch of salt. And then with time, after about 2 months, the first 2 months, you no longer have experienced any nightmares or hallucinations. Yeah.
Okay. And you have children, and I want to bring in Dr. Muthoni to this conversation. What happens to parents who have children and they already know their status? Is it important for the parents to let their children know this is my health status? And for parents who have given birth and their children are HIV positive, is it also important for them to let their children know?
Okay, that's a very complicated question. I don't know how I'm trying to see how best to answer it. You see, we are still addressing the issue about stigma. And it's the same way, like if a parent gets diabetes or gets high blood pressure and goes to tell their family about it. So even for HIV, that should not be an exclusion. The parent should also go and tell the family, his daughters, his sons, her daughters, her sons, her status, because she needs that support. If at all she's living in secrecy, it also does not help with her getting better. So It depends, but the best way, we advocate and we recommend for the parent to disclose to her family for family support and social support. You need that.
And for the parent to tell the children that this is your status, like you're HIV positive.
Wow. Now that one, you see, it's a bit hard to answer that particular question, because that one is more of if the parent decides. You know, at times it's usually like that. It's a parent who decides, I'm the one who's taking care of my child. I'm the one who will decide whether to tell my child's status or not. But that one is a bit hard to address.
Yeah,
personally.
I was asking that question because Fanny wasn't told about her status. She just got to know it while in school, and in the most saddest way.
Well, for me, I would say that I find such cases, like people approach me and ask me how they can disclose to their kids that they are taking them the ARVs, because definitely we have so many children on ARVs, and they're like they're adolescents. They definitely know they're on some drugs, but then they don't know what it is meant for. So for me, because counseling has become like almost basic these days, and of course we have the most enhanced comprehensive care clinics, the CCC, where we always take the drugs. I think that it is the work of the counselors to, you know, when the mother is ready, or the father, I mean the parents are ready, then they can go with the child, of course at a reasonable age, say 15, or, you know, depending on the IQ of the child. We have children who are about 10 years old and are so, you know, they're so intelligent, they're so mature. Depending on how you know and you've learned your child, you can go to the facility, and then the counselor will help you disclose.
But for you, you didn't know your status through your
Yes.
family. You got to know it through an organization in school. How
Precisely.
did you feel?
Of course, I felt betrayed, and that's why I advocate for disclosure when it is the right time with the child, because the child would feel betrayed, bitter, and lied to, of course, all through your life. Now, it makes it even worse when you're on ARVs and you keep on being, you're told, you know, you need to adhere to these drugs, and you're not told what type of drugs they are, but then you need to take them every day. At some point, you'd feel like it's your right to know why you're taking the drugs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Muthoni, there's been some concern or thinking that the government is actually shifting its focus now from the fight against HIV, because they feel like the fight is actually the new infection and is actually going down, and the focus is now more on the fight against cancer.
I don't know about that field really, but but from the statistics, it's showing that cancer is actually one of the, based on our lifestyle, it's the things that's actually ailing our population. HIV is still there. Can you imagine a number of over 1.5 million people? That's quite a huge number, because Kenya, we are like the 4th largest.
Yeah.
So we still have a very huge burden for HIV in this country. The same PLHIV are the same people who also get the cancers. So it's a double burden for these particular patients. So I don't know, unless when you start looking at one disease and then you blanket the other, when in the process of you blanketing one disease, it might crop up and come and overshadow the other disease. So you have to look at both diseases, because they actually kind of work together. Yeah.
Stigmatization has been a major concern, and even for people not to want to talk about their status and others not to want to go for tests. What made you, Fanny, to actually decide to come out and talk about your status?
Well, for the same reason, stigma. I think I went through stigma for 3 years in school. From that year that I discovered in Form 2, then Form 3, then Form 4. So then I went through all forms of discrimination, from not sharing plates with people to not sharing blankets, because they would literally know if they share with me, then they'll get infected. So basically, I experienced first-hand stigma. And normally with the person living with HIV, you will experience, after experiencing stigma from someone else, you'll have to stigmatize yourself. We call it self-stigma. So I went through 2 forms of stigma, and from there I decided The right way is to come out publicly, and of course after I'm psychologically prepared, I'm okay with coming out and disclosing my status, because I needed to educate people in regards to, you know, discrimination and stigma. And the foundation of all this is the misconception. People were stigmatizing me in school because they thought I would infect them by sharing plates with them. They thought by sharing blanket I would infect them. No one was there to like talk about, you know, the main ways of contracting HIV, or rather, we literally assumed. Yeah.
Dr. Muthoni, how should he handle stigma? And especially for children who are in school, like for her experiences from what we are getting is that she went through a very tough season while in high school. So how should the students and parents handle stigma?
Okay, it's that question is more, it's better to address it from basically the whole context, at home all the way to school. So like I gave you the example of, we have a teachers sensitization package whereby the teachers are actually, they're sensitized about how to deal with the students when they have HIV. Because you see, from her case, it wasn't even stigma it was stigma around with the other students that she was with, and that's very sad. So we even in schools, we are trying to advocate for communication, and we have this youth called Blast. There's Blast and Sautiskika. So they're able to go to schools, they're able to go to communities and talk to the students and tell them about HIV so that the stigma can actually die, because as an adolescent they face a lot. Hormonal changes, you can imagine now the whole stigma issue. So the other thing about stigma and discrimination is, apart from schools, we're also looking at it in the healthcare, in the workforce. Like every day in your everyday going to work, that's where you're seeing there's a lot of advertisements about HIV, a lot of communication. So we are trying to address stigma as much as we can, but it has to start from us also.
It has to start from us. Okay, let's head back to the guidelines that are being launched today. And apart from the 18 guidelines, you also have 2 more documents that will be released today. And it basically touches on circumcision. You know, can you probably talk to us more about it?
So just to correct you, it's 3 documents.
It's 3 documents.
Yeah,
2. I know 2. There's one on circumcision that touches on young children. Then there's the other one on talks about handles circumcision, and that has to do with the tetanus. Yeah.
So now, you know, of course, with circumcision, you know, it's basically they are recommending use of tetanus toxoid to this particular patients, because we've had quite a number of cases of complications with regards to circumcision. There's something we call Fournier's gangrene. So they're advocating for the tetanus toxoid for these people who are undergoing circumcision. And that document is now, it's not just circumcision for adults now, it's infants circumcision. Yeah, because we're trying to also, it's another HIV prevention mechanism.
Okay, and just before I let you go, because we're winding up this conversation. Has circumcision really helped in the fight against HIV and AIDS?
Tremendously. It actually helps a lot. We were focusing in the Turkana, the Nyanza region. It's helped a lot with regards to reducing HIV in the country. Yes, and so that's why we're even now going to an extent now of advocating for early infant circumcision.
Okay, so parents are being advised to have their babies undergo circumcision. So it doesn't mean whether your child is positive or not, it's advised.
Of course, we advocate if you're negative, because it's more of a HIV prevention, HIV prevention act, but circumcision is recommended all the same.
Okay. Fanny, your take on that?
My knowledge on circumcision is that especially if you're HIV positive, it reduces like 60% of you. Okay, if you're HIV negative, you have a 60% reduction in terms of exposure to HIV. And a very good example is with practically from my marriage, from my last relationship. Of course, the guy was circumcised, and in as much as we were a discordant couple, I can say that it contributed to him staying negative, apart from, of course, me taking my drugs and having a undetectable viral load. It really had a major impact. So I really advocate for it, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. We have been talking to Dr. Eve Muthoni, who's the coordinator, HIV and TB coordinator at NASCOP, and of course, Feni Awiti, who's an activist who's championing for the rights of women who are HIV and AIDS positive. It is a discussion